reconciliation report. We're all treaty people. I encourage you to go ahead and eat your salads. I'm going to be up here for a while. There's going to be other people up here, so you can start eating. We're encouraging you to do that. Tonight's conversation has been a long time coming. Just last week, the Chamber hosted a panel on housing, a sold-out panel, I might add, with over 150 people in the room. And we had folks from the city, developers, not-for-profits, and construction industries. So we had housing last week, and we have labor this week. The timing of these events is no coincidence. These two issues need to be addressed immediately with collaboration, optimism, and forward thinking. And that's what we plan to do tonight. I hope you noticed the fun fact coasters we had in the reception area. More than a third of businesses that we've surveyed are worried about labor, and I suspect that applies to many of the businesses in the room tonight. The way we do business and the way we work is evolving. We're coming up on the 100th anniversary of one of the last big evolutions in how we work, something we all treasure and value, the weekend. You may not remember the weekend when it was established over 100 years ago by Henry Ford so that he could sell more cars. What will the next evolution be? Tell us what you think. Tweet along with us tonight using the hashtag #HCCFallDinner. Tonight we'll hear from experts in demography, immigration settlement, education and talent, accessibility, inclusivity, and people retention. This is a tough topic to get through by 9 p.m., but we're going to try our best. We've assembled this lineup of talented and knowledgeable local speakers to provide insight on where work is headed and how we can meet these new challenges and opportunities to grow Halifax. Tonight is also about collaboration. We included the coasters and the suggestion boxes to get you involved and engaged in this conversation. To create a long-term plan for Halifax, we need your input. Collaboration is the only way forward. Frankly, that was the same conversation we had the other day at the housing event. Speaking of collaboration, I'd like to take a moment to thank our partners for the evening. Stuart McKelvey, our presenting sponsor, has been supporting our annual fall dinner for many years, and we're grateful for their continued support. In fact, to get ready for tonight's event, they released a series of articles highlighting themes of attraction and retention, immigration, and labor solution. And I encourage you to head to their website at stuartmckelvey.com to read through these thoughtful pieces and keep this conversation going. They've also selected a phenomenal organization as their charity of choice, Dartmouth Adult Services Center, or DASC. They're another great group. DASC is devoted to the being, belonging, and becoming of adults with intellectual disabilities. DASC is one of Nova Scotia's oldest and largest social enterprises. It serves 200 persons with intellectual disabilities annually, and it's a wonderful place to visit. I'm sure we can work out visits for everybody here, can't we, Hank? There we go, yep. It envisions a future in which people with intellectual disabilities and their families are empowered, self-determined, and fully engaged in their communities. Thank you to our celebration partner, KBRS, for supporting tonight's event. It's only fitting that we have one of Atlantic Canada's best-known recruitment firms involved in tonight's event. I hope you had a chance to check out our marketplace booths during the reception as you were coming in. Thank you to our marketplace partner, Common Good Solutions, for supporting tonight's marketplace. And thank you to our booth hosts for joining us this evening. We had McNaught Fashions, the North American Indigenous Games, which will be, I think, the biggest event ever staged in Halifax next summer. The Nova Scotia Department of Labour Skills and Immigration, DB Pearls Design, Scotia Kelp, High Powered Custom Apparel, Limestone Beverages, Mariah International Business and Vitality. So lots of great businesses out there. I hope you had a chance to take a look at them and take a look at their wares. Thank you to our premier gala partner, the Halifax Convention Centre. Thank you to our host partner, CN. Thank you, Al. And thank you to our print partner, Atlantic Digital. The Chamber loves a theme, and so tonight we'd like to also thank our Driving Diversity hosts. The Driving Diversity Initiative has been around for almost a decade. We ask our corporate table holders if they would host a student at their table by giving up one of their seats. The table hosts have a chance to meet some of these amazing prospective talent we have in the city, and the students have the opportunity to meet their potential employers and build a network in the business community. So please introduce yourself to the students, and I hope the students do a great job of introducing themselves to the balance of the table. We'd like to thank our Driving Diversity host this evening for building connections with the student population. It's now my pleasure to welcome to the stage the Halifax Chamber's Chair of the Board, the first immigrant woman to hold this position, recently inducted in WXN's Top 100 Most Powerful Women in Canada Hall of Fame, Chief Creative Officer and Principal of the award-winning marketing agency We Us Them, Faten Al-Shazli. Faten.
Someday pass on by, I'll be working here forever, at least until I die.
I like the music. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Chamber Board of Directors, I would like to welcome you all to tonight's event. The Chamber's board is made up of volunteer business and community leaders that help guide the Chamber's directions and priorities throughout the year. My thanks to the board, many of whom are in the room with us tonight, for their dedication to the Halifax business community and their guidance to the Chamber's future. This is also our last major event before the end of the calendar year. I want to thank the staff at the Chamber, the staff who have worked tirelessly to pull together all of our events, our position statements, all the research, work, and initiatives that we have undertaken, as well as lobby and work with our government partners at all levels. They may be behind the scene, and you probably see some of them all over, as Patrick and I usually take the stage at most of these events, but they make all of this happen, and our collective thanks from the board and the community goes to them. The Chamber is here to support our members and the larger business community as we navigate ongoing changes to our global and local economy. I invite you to reach out to our fabulous Chamber team or myself or a member of the board if there are any topics you would like more information on or would you like us to look into as your Chamber. I would also like to take this opportunity today to celebrate the best our community has to offer, and this year is no different. We will be having our awards dinner in January, where we will be shining a light on 35 organizations that represent our business, nonprofit, and community leaders making an impact in Halifax. I'm asking you now to join me in congratulating the 2023 Halifax Business Award finalists. Congratulations once again to all the finalists this year. Now, let's turn our attention to issues impacting our communities today. Most notably is access to skilled talent in and around our province. I am very excited and looking forward to hearing the various perspectives from our panel this evening. And this evening, of course, would not have been possible without our partners and sponsors. And with that, it is my pleasure to welcome our presenting partner, Rick Dunlop, with Stuart McKelvey to the stage.
It's bright. Thank you very much for that warm welcome. Good evening, everyone. Stuart McKelvey is pleased to be the presenting sponsor of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce Annual Fall Dinner. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all here in person. Isn't it nice to be here in person? For what I'm sure will be engaging discussions. The members of the panel we will hear from tonight have a wealth of knowledge on the topics of immigration, population retention, labor shortages, and education. It is through all of these lenses that we will look at and discuss how Halifax can grow with an eye on sustainability and long-term vitality and vibrancy, especially in light of the pressures of labor shortages. Growth is certainly on the minds of many in the Halifax business community. Between October 21st and January 22nd, Nova Scotia had the fastest growth among all Canadian provinces, with January 2022 making our province's population exceeding 1 million people. And furthermore, Halifax's population growth has mirrored that in recent times. Between July 2020 and July 2021, the city had the third fastest growth rate among all Canadian cities. So again, I think applause for that as well. A key driver of this growth has been the province's focus on being a top choice for immigration and a top choice for business. The focus on the growth of business and immigration come together in initiatives like the Atlantic Immigration Program. Here, the province has partnered with the federal government to work with employers to address labor gaps and hire foreign skilled workers who want to stay in the region, as well as retain international graduates who want to stay here post-graduation. This work collaborates with settlement associations and their valuable expertise and insight to further support individuals and families. And our tech and innovation sectors are flourishing also. Businesses at all stages from startup to scale-up mode and beyond are connecting with international talent and provincial and municipal programs to link opportunities and resources. However, it is no secret that labor shortages show some of their most intense impacts when discussed in the context of healthcare systems. A July 2022 report from the Nova Scotia Health Authority showed that over 100,000 Nova Scotians are without a family doctor, and that 38,000 of those are in the central zone, which encompasses HRM. To help address this, the province has multiple streams of the provincial nominee program specifically targeting the recruitment and retention of healthcare professionals from a number of fields and specialty areas. As Halifax and Nova Scotia continue to grow and develop, the demands on our workforce will change, and navigating these changes will require collaboration and innovation if we're looking to attract and retain top talent to the province and help address labor shortages. Ahead of this event, some of you may have seen our labor and employment and immigration lawyers provide insight and thought leadership on many of these issues. For us at Stuart McKelvey, innovation and collaboration are at the heart of how we do business. To meet the needs of a changing workforce, our dedicated teams provide counsel to employers on many of the complex issues they face today, including navigating work permits, employment standards, and the immigration approval process. With change comes the opportunity for growth, and Halifax continues to be one of the best places to live, both for those of us with long histories here and for those of us who have arrived more recently. We are a vibrant, dynamic city with so much to offer businesses, people, and families. It comes as no surprise that people from around the world continue to come to Halifax and Nova Scotia and make it their chosen home. It is for these reasons that I'm excited to share in this evening's timely discussions. I'm confident with all the brainpower and diverse opinions in this room that we will leave this evening better prepared to work through and embrace the challenges and opportunities facing our workforce, and looking forward to continued growth and prosperity for Haligonians and Nova Scotians. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Fatten, and thank you very much, Rick and Stuart McKelvey, for your support. I hope you're all enjoying your salads. They're going fast, so I hope you've been eating them. I am lucky to be joined on stage this evening by a lot of incredible people. We actually have 2 head tables tonight because we've got so many folks. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker, our celebration partner, Catherine Risley, Managing Partner with KBRS and Meridia Recruitment Solutions, to introduce our next speaker.
So that's good music tonight. I'm not quite Hugh Grant from Love Actually, but I'll run with it. So I'm thrilled to be here tonight at an event that centers on two key themes that are near and dear to our heart at KBRS, people and Halifax. I want to thank the Chamber for making labor solutions the focus of tonight's discussion, because where there's focus, there's opportunity for real, meaningful change. And embracing change will be so critical as we move to overcome the labor shortages that organizations currently face. Those of us on the front lines of talent attraction, recruitment, and development know too well the impact of not having the right people with the right skills in the right roles at the right time. At KBRS, we work with leaders and HR professionals every day, many of whom are here in the room tonight, to help navigate talent challenges and plan for opportunities ahead. And so we know, because we hear those stories from you, the far-reaching impacts and often personal impacts that those labor shortages and skill gaps can have. A few gray hairs and restless night's sleep, I think all of us can attest to that. But beyond that, labor shortages impact the effectiveness of teams, they reduce productivity, and they stand in the way of your organizations reaching their goals. And what's clear and reinforced by the candidates and clients we speak with every day is that there isn't a single cause, rather a wide variety of factors at play. Long before the pandemic, economists pointed to the potential for labor shortages. It's the inevitable result of our aging population. And so, as a province, we've sought to support immigration as one solution and have had many successes in doing so. As a recruitment professional, I can tell you that the idea of selling Halifax to candidates is an easy one. We've got a lot going here in our city. I think it's why a lot of us are here. But attracting people to our region is only one piece of the puzzle. We all need to ask ourselves, how are we as businesses and as a community engaging and developing the people that are striving to call Halifax their home? Whether they're a new graduate, a new Canadian, or simply new to an organization, thinking about how we build talent capacity locally rather than seeking it externally is a critical part of the solution. In our work, we regularly meet with candidates who are struggling to realize the potential with local employers. There's a long list of what gets in their way, including barriers such as an over-reliance on Canadian experience, requiring an arbitrary number of years of experience or skills that aren't relevant to success, and a preference to hire skills rather than invest in developing talent within teams that already exist. And in addition, unconscious bias, which stack the odds in favor of some candidates over others. But one of the more encouraging shifts I've seen over the past number of years has been an increased desire to create a more diverse and inclusive workplaces that effectively engage a wider variety of people. Nearly every leader we speak with about talent strategy acknowledges the importance of increasing the diversity of their team, a theme that I'm sure tonight's discussion will further illuminate. But the path towards greater diversity and inclusion requires constant attention and reaffirming our commitment to do better. Now is the time for every organization and everyone in this room to reflect and consider how they can affect change. We all have a role to play, and you may not have identified yours yet, but that's okay. I encourage you to think about your role during tonight's discussion. If you're in this room, you can have an impact in some way. I hope that the ideas presented by tonight's panelists inspire you to reflect, to seek support in developing your talent strategy, whether through internal advisors or external experts, and to act where you see opportunity for change. On behalf of the team at KBRS and Meridia Recruitment Solutions, I want to thank you for being here tonight and for being part of such a critical discussion. It's now my pleasure to introduce Maritka Samsudin to the stage. Maritka is an instructor at the Economics Department of Dalhousie University and a consultant at the World Bank. Her research focuses on migration, labor, and impact evaluations of social protection programs. She holds a PhD in economics from Georgetown University, DC, and has several academic publications. Please help me in welcoming Maritka to the stage.
Taking care of business every day. Taking care of business every way. I've been taking care of business. It's all mine. Taking care of business and working overtime.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining, and thank you to Halifax Chambers of Commerce for inviting me. I am Dr. Mittika Samsuddin, an instructor at Dalhousie University, and it is my great pleasure today to walk you through the changing demographics of Nova Scotia. As an immigrant myself, who have lived in 4 different countries across the world, after I left my homeland, Bangladesh, when I was only 16 years old. We live in an unprecedented moment in history, with an estimated 8 billion people in the world, and an estimated 1 million of them live in Nova Scotia. What does that mean for our workforce and labor market? The data for my talk comes from Statistics Canada. And a disclaimer first, here I'm only talking about correlation. I'm not claiming any causation. The blue line here in the diagram you see is the population of Nova Scotia. The population before 2016 did not change much, but you see from 2016 census to 2021 census, we see a big jump in population. In 2022, we did not have a census, but the estimates suggest that in 2022, the population of Nova Scotia has surpassed 1 million. The lines here show population growth rates. The red line for the overall Canada and the blue line for Nova Scotia. You see, before 2016, the population growth rate in Nova Scotia has lagged behind the national by a large margin. But from 2016 to 2021, the population growth rate in Nova Scotia has been about 5.2%, which is almost the same as that of whole Canada. Halifax is the 13th largest municipality in Canada, with about 469,000 population. Since 2016, it grew by about 9.1%, which is the 3rd largest increase, trailing by the 10.6% in Brampton and 9.7% in Surrey. So more and more people are living in Nova Scotia. But where is this growth coming from? Population grows by new births, and as more and more people moves into the region from elsewhere, and decreases with deaths. Births and deaths are just natural processes. And in the historical series, we see that both birth rates and death rates have decreased over the last century due to economic growth and medical advances. In the last 5 years, the births and the deaths in Nova Scotia hasn't changed much, but what has changed is migration. When we talk about migration, we focus on net migration because people, like me, do not choose only one country. We come and then we move out. And people in Nova Scotia also can choose other provinces and countries to move out to. If we look into net immigration, we see that in the last year, net immigration added about 14,000 new people to the population of Nova Scotia. Net interprovincial migration added another 14,000. And net non-permanent residents, which include the students and temporary workers, added another 4,000. What is more interesting is that net migration increased across all age groups, but more so for the younger cohorts. In the age group 15 to 34 years, we see the highest increase. The immigration system in Canada is also designed to attract the youth. especially in the age group of 20 to 33 years, so that they can come in Canada, work for a longer period of time, and contribute to the economy for a longer period of time. With significant increase in immigration and interprovincial migration of younger cohorts, the median age of Nova Scotia has decreased to 44.2 years in 2022 July. This is still the third highest median age of any provinces in Canada, only before Newfoundland and Labrador and New Brunswick. But this is not really unexpected, because a lot of baby boomers have chosen Atlantic provinces for their place to spend their retirement age. Today's workforce is tomorrow's old, and today's children are tomorrow's workforce. So it is not only that population growth and migration is enough, but the movers need to settle down, integrate in the economy, have kids who then become tomorrow's workforce. Nova Scotia has beautiful scenic beauty, but what about their job opportunities? With increase in working age population, the labor force in Nova Scotia is growing. We see unemployment in the third quarter of 2022 was about 6.2%, which is lower than the pre-pandemic unemployment rate. Employment has increased to a level which is also above the pre-pandemic era, which is given by the orange line in the diagram. Job vacancy and wage survey reveals that Nova Scotia's job vacancy rate was about 5.2% in the last quarter, but it is lower than the national average. A high job vacancy rate implies tighter labor market, meaning that it is difficult for employers to find the suitable candidate for the positions they are offered. Job vacancy rate in Nova Scotia were lower than the national average in every category, except arts and entertainment, construction, and healthcare. The arts and entertainment industry was the hardest hit during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown and experienced a dramatic increase in tourism during the last quarter of 2022, the summer months. As a result, I believe many of you might have found it difficult to hire new people during the summer months. Increase in housing prices and real estate have increased demand for construction workers. A lot of construction workers have retired, but new construction workers are not taking their positions up. The retired baby boomers need health care, but these kind of jobs require diplomas and Canadian licenses, which takes time and resource for new immigrants to acquire. Of course, interprovincial migrants can take this job, but compared to the national average, the wage offered for vacant positions in Nova Scotia are lower for all sectors, the largest wage difference being in the construction sector. Wages are rewards to labor, so it needs to adjust up when the market is tight. We are living in an environment of high inflation, with an inflation rate of about 6.9% between 2021 and 2022. But average wages did not adjust much. The national average wage increased by about only 2.4%, while in Nova Scotia, wage only increased by about 1%. What is more alarming is that in the healthcare sector, wage rate has gone down. So market in the healthcare is not correcting. However, the good news comes from construction and arts and entertainment. We see that both experience an dramatic increase in wage rate, showing signs that market is correcting and adjusting to the tighter conditions. We are living in an interesting time in Nova Scotia with many possibilities and challenges. And today, I will want to end my talk saying that Nova Scotia has attained population growth, has attracted migrants, but now the challenge is harder. Now the challenge is to retain these migrants so that they can play an active role in the economy of Nova Scotia, economically, socially, culturally, and politically. Thank you.
Less conversation, a little more action. All this aggravation ain't satisfaction in me. A little more fight, a little.
There we go. Thank you very much, Murtika. That was very informative. It's good. It's important for us to all understand the baseline. I love data. I know that's a lot of data, but I think we learned a lot of things, actually. We shouldn't be surprised that we don't have as many healthcare workers if healthcare salaries are going down. We shouldn't be surprised that construction salaries are going up to meet a lack of construction workers. So it's great. Thank you very much. Dalhousie is lucky to have you. Dinner is coming out now, so you should get ready for dinner. So I apologize, Minister, but we're going to be starting the serving of dinner while you're talking. So it's my pleasure to welcome the Honourable Sean Fraser, Member of Parliament for Central Nova and Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Minister.
Hello and good evening, everyone. I'll start my ritual off by following in former Premier McNeil's footsteps by adjusting the microphone so we can actually hear one another. Look, it's a great honor to be gathered here in person with so many people, and I want to say thank you to our hosts at the Halifax Chamber and Stuart McKelvey as sponsors as well for this terrific evening. I'm thrilled that we're able to gather to have an important conversation about the labor market and the role that immigration might play in it. I think sometimes people are right to point out that governments make simple problems more difficult than they need to be. And when it comes to immigration and addressing the needs of our economy, my view is that this might be a big problem, but it is a simple one. And Canada needs more people, and Nova Scotia needs more people. We need more people for economic reasons, and we need more people for demographic reasons. I think it's important that we situate this conversation in the appropriate economic context, and I thank very much our previous presenter for sharing the data with us to really outline the necessity to continue to grow our population. When I look at the economic context that we're living through, I can't divorce myself from the fact that Canada's experienced one of the strongest economic recoveries of any advanced economy in the world from the depths of the COVID-19 recession. When I look at the data, what I see right now is the fact that our GDP has bounced back to pre-pandemic levels, and more than that, frankly. We see that we've recently reached the lowest rate in Canada's recorded history of unemployment. But despite these successes, over the course of this summer, we were dealing with almost 1 million empty jobs in this country. You don't have to look at the data and pore over the labor force statistics from Stats Canada every month to understand that there's a labor shortage. Walk down Main Street in any community in Canada or any community in this province. You're going to see a help wanted sign in the window. So we need to continue to bring people in if we're going to meet the needs of our local employers, to continue to allow Canadian businesses to grow, and to make sure we don't just provide jobs for the people who come to our communities, but sustain the jobs of the people who've been here for generations. And as much as I may be alarmed in the need to continue to increase the rate of immigration to meet short-term gaps in our economy, we have to remind ourselves that there are bigger long-term trends at play, and turn our minds to the opportunity to fill the skills gap that exists for the economy that's going to be here several decades from now. As much as I like to discuss the needs of the Canadian economy and the ability of our immigration system to meet those needs, We can't just be having conversations about the short-term labor shortages. We need to turn our mind to an alarming demographic trend that our communities are living through. And that's a trend of our aging population. You know, if I look back to the stats from 50 years ago, you'll see that there were 7 workers for every retiree in this country. Today, that number is closer to 3. In Atlantic Canada, that number is closer to 2. If we want to continue on the trajectory that we've been on for most of our province's history, the conversations we're going to be having a generation from now won't be about labor shortages. It's going to be about whether we can afford to continue to operate schools and hospitals in our province. And this is not some theoretical concept. Folks, I'll tell you, when I first decided to get involved in elected office, some of the major issues during the 2015 election campaign involved the closure of the River John Elementary School in a rural community not far from where I call home. It included the loss of our mental health unit at the Aberdeen Hospital. These conversations were very real and tangible things for our community members because too many people were leaving our province. Frankly, we couldn't afford to continue to operate a school in River John because so many young families had left. We couldn't safely operate a mental health unit at the largest regional hospital in northern Nova Scotia because we had lost a healthcare professional that made it unsafe to continue operating a mental health unit. The reality is we need to continue to welcome young families to our communities and health professionals if we're going to continue to expect the level of services that frankly I think we too often take for granted. But the good news is we're starting to buck this trend. If you looked at the Stats Canada report that came out about a month ago, you'll have seen that Atlantic Canada has more than tripled its share of newcomers that are coming to this country. You'll see as of a couple of years ago, more young people are moving into Nova Scotia than are leaving for the first time since I was a very young kid. These are extraordinary developments that are impacting our communities in a very positive way. And I'm excited to see that we're going to continue to build on the population growth that we've observed. For those of you who don't watch closely the details of the annual immigration levels plan, like I'm required to for work, I know that somebody got the joke in there. You'll see that we developed a program that was launched a number of years ago in collaboration with the 4 Atlantic provinces and the federal government, which started out as a program that was going to bring 4,000 workers and their families to Atlantic Canada each year to meet key gaps in our labor force. As of 2025, we expect that number to grow to 14,500. The reality is, on the trend that we are on right now, the conversations I'm having at home are whether we can build houses quickly enough to accommodate all the people who want to move to our communities, instead of having conversations about losing schools and hospitals because so many people are leaving. Immigration is going to continue to play a key role to spur our economic growth and ensure the sustainability of our communities for generations to come. I'm so pleased to be able to join the Halifax Chamber tonight, who is a huge advocate for continuing to bring workers into our community to grow our population. So pleased to be joined by so many like-minded folks who are seeking to grow the economy of Atlantic Canada. And I'm so pleased to be able to join you tonight to represent the federal government. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
That was great. Thank you. Oh, now I get to pull these down. There we go. Thank you very much, Minister. Very much appreciate you being here. And you're right. The Chamber is very happy about the recent announcements that your department has made on the targets for 23, 24, 25, and ongoing. And we're very happy that the Atlantic Immigration Program has goals that now reach up to 14,500 people over the next couple of years. So we're really happy about that. And obviously, as Murtika showed us, these are numbers that we need to grow. We'll now take a pause for dinner, and let's enjoy a little more conversation. We'll see you after dinner in about an hour. Thank you very much, everybody. great. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed your dinner. The Halifax Convention Centre always does a fabulous dinner, so thank you very much to the folks at the Convention Centre, and of course to the team who put it together. Thank you very much. Now, it's my honor to introduce our host for this evening's panel discussion. You won't have to worry about me being up here all evening. Jennifer Angel. Jennifer is no stranger to many people in this room. Jen continues to be recognized as a builder of community momentum and places people love. Renowned for her ability to develop vibrant and accessible places, she is celebrated for her collaborative approach to infrastructure development, working closely with citizens, civic leaders, public agencies, and investors alike. Formerly the president and CEO of Develop Nova Scotia, Jen is credited with shaping some of Nova Scotia's most visited destinations, including most recently Peggy's Cove and, of course, the Halifax waterfront, the most visited spot in Nova Scotia. I think Jen can correct me on that if I'm wrong. Now, as CEO of Evergreen, she works with public and private sector interests to build better cities through the development of inclusive and sustainable public spaces. Jen was recognized in Atlantic Business Magazine's Top 50 CEOs in Atlantic Canada in 2021 and the Most Powerful Women in Atlantic Canada in 2022. And she recently received the inaugural Wijewinen, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Allyship Award from the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center. And tonight, she's here to share what she's learned over the past 2 decades of building places that attract people, spur investment, and create well-being for all. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer Angel.
Good evening, everybody. They've got me over here to shake things up a little bit. For the past decade and a half, and together with many others, my job was to steward places in Nova Scotia to attract people. Why? Because people, as you've heard, and you know, are the building blocks of a thriving economy. And we knew that to reverse the trend of a declining population, it was critical to focus efforts to attract people here, to visit and to live. So we doubled down on our quality of life by the sea advantage, and we worked across public and private sectors and with community to build places that work for people, that work for all of us. And you'd recognize some of these places, included among them the Halifax waterfront just down the hill from here. After a long and persistent trend of outmigration, as you heard before dinner, and for a variety of reasons, a handful of years ago, things began to change. And people, including young people, began to stay, to come back, to choose Nova Scotia. And the pandemic served to accelerate this migration. As hybrid and remote work continues to evolve, people have a greater choice in where they live. And I'm a case in point. My head office is now in Toronto, but home remains in Halifax. This is generally good news for a place like Nova Scotia that still promises a great quality of life. And now companies seek out talent where it is rather than the other way around. I don't think I have to tell you this story because you've been part of it, you're living it, you know it. And you also know that the growth story isn't all good news. The pace of growth has been quick, it's been uneven, that is, not everyone has benefited equally from it, and it's even been destabilizing in our communities. We're seeing acutely the cracks that are emerging in housing and healthcare and other infrastructure, and while these challenges are not unique to Halifax, that doesn't make them any less urgent to solve, and there's lots of smart people working to solve them. Despite these very consequential stress points, we still need growth. We need growth to solve the challenges of growth, as labor shortages are a critical bottleneck in health and housing, among other sectors. We need to embrace growth in population for our economy, and we need to embrace it because welcoming different people from different cultures with different lived experiences and different points of view is the right thing to do, and it makes our communities more interesting, more engaging, more innovative, and better. As we make big investments in infrastructure to respond to these growth pressures, as we move quickly to build housing to meet demand, for example, we need to ensure we're also thoughtful, pushing the utility of the infrastructure we build to solve multiple challenges at the same time and to seize these various opportunities before us. We can ensure that what we build leverages and supports existing services and infrastructure and amenities, that we're building sustainable and even regenerative places, protecting and expanding green spaces in our city, that we're building a mix of housing and high-quality, inclusive public spaces for healthy and resilient communities. None of us, public sector, private sector, community sector, can solve these challenges alone. They're too big and too complex, and they require tools and expertise that reside across orders of government and across our economy. And we've articulated ambitious growth goals. Companies need talent to operate, to innovate, to win. That we solve the challenges to this growth is critical, but how we solve them is critical to remaining competitive as a place that people want to live. We need to do it well. We need to do it better than others do it. The infrastructure decisions we're making now are signaling to people who we are, and they're shaping the city and province that will become. We must maintain and enhance the high quality of life that made people choose us in the first place. It's a false choice between going fast and building thoughtful places. We can and we must do both, and we need to work together to realize the possibility of this place. The tool we used in my work to attract people here and that I continue to use in my work now nationally is this concept of place. And when I say place, I don't mean just any place. I mean a truly special place, and you know it when you see it. They're the places you enjoy being part of. They're magnetic. They're places that welcome and work for all of us, that prioritize our health and our well-being as people, that support local businesses and events and bring us together in community. These kinds of places can only be built together, and they contribute in important ways to the conditions for people to find a home and really thrive in Nova Scotia, and that's what tonight is all about. And I'm so delighted to have a chance now to chat with leaders building a Nova Scotia where everyone can belong for sustainable growth. Their work is welcoming, training, including, and retaining people in our community. And my first guest tonight is Jennifer Watts. Jennifer is the CEO of ISANS, the Immigrant Services Association of Nova Scotia, known to most of us as ISANS, which is the largest immigrant-serving settlement agency in Atlantic Canada. As CEO, she oversees the administration and programs and strategic plan while contributing to national and regional policy discussions and engaging with elected officials on immigration issues. She's trained as an urban and rural planner, has a background in community development, urban and rural planning, and municipal issues, having served for 8 years as a councillor on Halifax Regional Council before joining ISANS. Please join me in welcoming. Show thing going on.
All right.
So let's lean into it. So, big numbers in immigration. Right off the top, we had a beautiful presentation before dinner. Let's talk about that. Why is immigration important to our province?
Well, I can say it's always wonderful when you have the Minister of Immigration here to kind of lead it up and just really paint the big picture. So thank you, Sean. It was great to have that kind of, I think, emphasis on why it's so important from a labor market perspective to have immigration. So building on that, I would agree with absolutely everything he said. I think building on that, I think there's other things that we need to be really thinking about what immigration does for us as well. And it really helps us build the social and cultural fabric of our community, which then I think will enhance us and increase also our global competitiveness as a labor force, but also really helps build that kind of social infrastructure that we need as well. The volunteers in our community, the contribution that immigrants bring in terms of wanting to give back to the community as they settle here is going to be really important. It's not just our labor market, it's also who we are as Nova Scotians and how we contribute. The other thing I will say about that is that in these streams of people that are coming in, so people come in through the economic stream, family stream, and a refugee stream, that is also a really important place for us when we think about immigration, about our humanitarian commitment. And as Canadians, we have stood up very clearly during the Syrian crisis, but also now as we see with Afghanistan and Ukraine. It matters to us, and we care about that, and we hear about people wanting to help. And so it says something to us. I think it calls us to a wider kind of sense about who we are as global citizens and contribution. Very interesting project, actually, in the minister's riding is a new initiative of the Canadian government around the Economic Mobility Pilot Project, which is actually helping refugees come in because of the skilled talent they bring. So I think it's important to recognize that in all those categories, people come with tremendous skill and opportunity, and that EMPP project is a very interesting one that I think will help also Canada in its economic recovery.
I love that. And so how is iSANS kind of approaching the opportunity to make Nova Scotia a home for these many immigrants?
So we're a full-service delivery agency. So we do resettlement, language services, employment, business development, community integration. We have a very strong team, as I said, around business development as well as employment. So we deliver a holistic approach to service delivery. We have a 40-year history of doing that, and we work with some marvelous partners. One of them is the Y here in terms of the Center for Immigration, the work that they do as well. So we understand that that holistic approach is important, but it's also important in that it's not just for the principal applicant. And I think this is important for us all to remember. It's not just the person who's coming in for the job, it's who also is coming with them. It's the family. And if the family feels integrated and supported, if that spouse has a career pathway that they're looking to develop, if the kids are seeing their future here, that will mean that family, that unit will stay here and have a sense of belonging. So I think there's lessons to be learned about really looking at it beyond just the person who's coming to do the job and to the person who's coming to be here with their family to see their future here. So what can we do to support them?
Love that. It's a great question. And we're going to now bring our next guest to the stage to help us better understand how, once people are here, we're providing education pathways to help them build better futures. Dawn Bureau has been president of the Nova Scotia Community College since 2011. Dawn's commitment to adult education spans 2 decades, working with adult learners at colleges and universities, as well as professional designation granting organizations across Canada and internationally. He's been recognized as a top 50 CEO by Atlantic Business Magazine for 5 consecutive years and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2019. Join me in welcoming Dawn Bureau to the stage. Quite the intro, too.
I know.
I was hoping you would dance.
I can't wait to meet myself. Wow.
So we know, Dawn, that NSCC helps prepare people by leveling up skills to be able to participate in today's rapidly changing economy. What are the most significant changes currently occurring in our economy that are shaping the future of training and education?
You know, when I think about the changes of the economy, kind of 2 things come to mind. First of all, is this trend that the World Economic Forum has termed the 4th Industrial Revolution. And I think as a group, we need to think deeply about what that means for us. So of course, the 4th Industrial Revolution, there were 3 earlier ones back in the early 1700s. A Welsh miner figured out how to use steam power to take water from a mine, changed the world. And then in the 1800s, they discovered the power of electricity to automate or to change the way that things were manufactured, changed the world. 50 years ago with the microchip, the third revolution, again, changed the world. But what I believe is that Nova Scotia never really benefited from the first three industrial revolutions. With the fourth industrial revolution that we're in the midst of now, which is the intersectionality of big data and automation and robotics and blockchain computing, for the first time in 300 years, I think Nova Scotia's competitive advantage has been changed. No longer do we have to promote ourselves primarily on low-cost, low-skilled labor. Now, in this industrial revolution, high-valued talent is the competitive advantage. And in Nova Scotia, we have a lot of that. So I think that's a big economic disruption, that we're living in this revolution right now. We need to be thinking about that from a training point of view. The second one, of course, is COVID. You think about the turn of the century, 22 years ago, we've had three major disruptions: 9/11, the stock market crash of 2008, and of course COVID. And COVID, as we talked about tonight, has fundamentally changed the rules of the future of work. It's just the economics, the philosophy, the practice of work has changed. So those two large economic differences, one that's been 300 years in the works, one that's been, the past 3 years, those are fundamentally changing, I would say, the way that we train and the way that we work in this province. Yeah.
Thanks. That's a good history lesson. How is the workforce responding to the changes?
In this role, I have a unique opportunity to participate in 21 convocation ceremonies every year. We convocate over 5,000 people. And I get to spend 12 seconds with each of those 5,000 people and have a bit of an exit interview with them. And that exit interview has changed over the past couple of years. The average age of our student at NSCC is about 28 years old. So we have a lot of 38-year-olds and 48-year-olds and 58-year-olds. And I talk to them about why did they come to study. The answer has been different in the past couple of years than prior years. And where I'm getting at here is we hear a lot about the Great Resignation. In the US, there are about 4.5 million people resigning each month still. When Gallup did a research piece, they found 41% of the American workforce were thinking about leaving their work. Wow. And that's true, the similar stats in Canada. So getting back to my exit interviews, when I talk to people, it's not so much they resigned, it's more they're reshuffling. So it's not a great resignation, it's a great reshuffle. Simon Sinek has a great piece, for those of you who follow him. He talks a lot about how people now have overcome that fear of the unknown. Before COVID, it was like, my job's okay, but I'm just too nervous to go somewhere else, so I'm gonna stay here. But as people have survived COVID, that fear of the unknown is kind of being lessened. And they're taking that great leap right now. And when I talk to graduates, they're saying, I'm not quite sure what I want to do, but I don't want to do that anymore. And I think it's incumbent upon us to ask, why are they making that change? And in large part, they're looking for a different culture. That's what I hear from the next generation of our workforce. They want a fundamentally different culture.
Love it. There is more to dig into there.
Perfect.
The next person coming up will speak to how we make sure that we're including everyone in today's Halifax. Jerry Post is best known for his advocacy work to improve accessibility for persons with disabilities. He's an urban planner who has worked and lived around the globe for the past 40 years. He's been honored with various awards, including the World Leadership Award in Town Planning and Urban Governance for his work in the Middle East, and the Nova Scotia Human Rights Award for his accessibility advocacy. In 2017, he was appointed the first executive director for accessibility in Nova Scotia and was in charge of implementing the province's Accessibility Act. Please give a warm round of applause to Jerry Post.
Last night a little dancer came dancing to my door. Last night a little angel came pumping on my floor.
so happy that you're joining us in the conversation, Jerry. Let's start with you helping us all to understand a bit more about our community, and in particular, disabled persons who are here in Nova Scotia. We had a chance to work together, do some work together, and you shared with me often that Nova Scotia has one of the highest disability rates in the country. What does this mean for economic development?
Well, a couple of things. A lot of people don't know is that, our disability rate is about 30%, which is, quite high. The national average is 22%. And that's because of our aging population, as was explained earlier by the professor. In fact, if you're a senior citizen like myself, it's 43%. It's almost half of the seniors have at least one form of a disability. So it's not just wheelchairs, it's people that have hearing issue and other issues dealing with ability. So yeah, we're quite high. And the impact of that, since we're one of the highest in Canada, I see it, again, I see everything as an opportunity, right? And the opportunity I see is that we're ahead of the curve for the rest of Canada. And one example is that we have an Accessibility Act, one of the first provinces in Canada to have one. And so that has put in place a lot of actions to accommodate persons with disabilities. And I think that would serve the general population well, especially in areas like tourism, for example. So it's not necessarily a disadvantage. I think it's an advantage, actually.
I love that. And so why should businesses become more accessible beyond the obvious and consider hiring people with disabilities?
Well, one is, of course, the power of spending that persons with disabilities have. And what people don't realize is that the consumer spending power in Canada back in 2017, the last time they did an estimate, was about $168 billion. Translated to Nova Scotia, it's about $21 billion. So that's quite significant. So make yourself accessible to tie into that market. And of course, a huge labor pool that's talented and is sitting on the bench. And ask why. And I think one of our biggest challenges, not so much door openers and ramps, really it's changing mindsets. So it's really the attitudinal barriers that we need to break through.
And you've been doing a remarkable job of that in Nova Scotia.
Well, tried, and I'll tell you one little story that had an enormous impact on me and why I'm doing all this advocacy. I spent about a year in hospital in the rehab center about 10 years ago when this happened to me. And when I was there and the whole community develops, I met a young woman. Dawn's heard this story. She had just graduated from Dow with a master's degree, top of her class, took all the prizes, looking for a job, and she asked for some help with her resume, so I helped her. She sent over 200 resumes, not one reply. I would have hired her like that. And the reason I thought was, well, she wrote down on the bottom that she had a disability. She says, well, get rid of that, send it out again. And she did, got a few interviews and still no job. I lost track of her, and out of the blue, about 7, 8 months later, I got a call from her aunt advising me that she had committed suicide. And that, of course, had an enormous impact on me. And it's my opinion is that, she didn't kill herself, the community did. So we need to be kinder. And, this woman with this enormous amount of talent just wasted. So, yes.
A tragic and important lesson for all of us. We are short on talent, and we've got tons of talent right here, as you say, sitting on the bench.
Yes.
Our final guest tonight is on a mission to create more socially conscious workplaces. Bradley Day leads a social enterprise community interest company called P4G. By offering services that range from socially conscious recruiting, values alignment, and leading human dynamics practices, Bradley inspires organizations to embrace cultural differences, lived experiences, and the vulnerability that comes with being human at work. Bradley has deep roots in Nova Scotia, born and raised in Halifax. He's a community leader, and he's a coach, and he's a member of the African Nova Scotian community. Those roots are what keep him grounded and provide the motivation behind the work that he does now. Please join me in welcoming Bradley Day to the conference.
You say that working is what a man's supposed to do. And I say it ain't right if I can't give sweet love to you. I'm tired of thinking of what my life's supposed to be.
I hope I'm not expected to dance to that.
You could dance. You could be the first. Great to have you join us, Bradley.
Thank you.
What you're doing in our communities is a really important part of not just attracting, but also retaining talent in Nova Scotia. And we'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about P4G. What solutions are you working on in your organization that you think get to some of the challenges we're trying to solve, or the things we've been talking about today?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jen, and good evening, everyone. I'm really honored and privileged to be here and be speaking with you all and sharing this space. Welcome, sharing the space with these wonderful human beings. Thank you for having me. I want to give a quick shout out to Neha, who's been at the Chamber for 1 year. We helped bring Neha into the Chamber, and she was the lead organizer for this event, so give it up for Neha.
Neha's been amazing.
She's been great. So we are a recruiting firm, among many things. And we've been focused on recruiting. We've been doing a lot more DEI consulting. We've been helping in the education space as well. And in the last 100 searches that we've done, over 70% of the people that have been successful in those searches come from equity-deserving groups. And that is something that is incredibly important to us. But I think what I've been hearing from everyone, and in particular you, Jerry, is that belonging is really what we're here to talk about, and really what our focus is at P4G. And when I think about, we all are looking for an opportunity to belong. So I want to pose a question to everybody in the room in terms of, have you ever been in a situation where you had to change something about yourself in order to fit in? I know I have, by show of hands. So we've all had that experience, and I think that fit is actually the opposite of belonging. So when we entered into the recruiting space, we said, how can we change the language of recruiting? Because we want people to come and show up and not look at an organization and say, well, how do I fit in, but how do I contribute? And that simple flip in the language allows people to show up as their full self, allows the organization to realize that they value somebody's lived experience and the difference of opinion and culture and background that they bring to an opportunity. So I think at the crux of everything that we've done has been trying to help organizations create that sense of belonging in the workplace.
Love it. The legal designation of P4G is a community interest company. I don't know if most people know what that means.
I don't know if
Unpack that for us a little
very
bit.
many people in here would know much about that designation. Yeah, so what that actually legally requires us to do is to put 60% of our profits back into community. And I wanted to talk a little bit about a conversation I was actually having on a retreat this past weekend. I got to spend some time with a friend of mine, Andrea Curry. And we were having a conversation, and I promise this is relevant. We were having a conversation about the gift economy. Who has heard, we're at a Chamber of Commerce, who has heard the gift economy? By show of hands, so few people. And she was telling me a story. She's an incredible Métis writer, and she was telling me a story of Liam Haggerty, who's an economics writer in terms of a Métis economics writer, and speaking about a Métis culture where it was a kind of hunting and gathering culture. And the survival of that culture was based on sharing resources with each other. Literally, to survive, you had to share the resources that you had. And when I think about that, there was a quote that she mentioned that I want to share that really captured why it is we want to reinvest in our communities. And she mentioned that the best icebox for your game is in the stomach of your neighbor. And that really sat with me as this is a survival thing for us. So when we think about reinvesting in our communities, we think about this as a survival piece to us. So, that's essentially what drove us and inspired us to want to reinvest back in communities.
Thank you. So we have a really interesting panel of people approaching this idea of belonging from very different sort of areas of our community. And we want to take a few minutes now and kind of weave some of these themes together if we can. I'm going to start with you, Jennifer. We know we're in a competition for talent. How do we get even more people to choose Nova Scotia, and at least as importantly, as we've heard over and over tonight, to stay here?
So I think one of the things to do is that we work very hard at Iceland's around the development of programs that really connect people into what is happening here in the labor market. So we do a lot of interesting things like around building bridge to work programs, very practical programs, work with employers. We do numerous things that help in language development and work. So we do all of that because we see what immigrants bring is that they bring capacity to our communities, which is really important. One of the things that I think that we also do a lot of work on is a workplace culture and really helping for people who are having immigrants come into their workplace, about how you can approach that in a way that is engaging, that is respectful, that really builds that community and that sense of belonging. So that's also a very key resource that we think is key as well. So it's thinking beyond, and I think understanding that this is not like a box to be ticked. It's not something that we do and say, well, we did that course, we sent some people on a cultural awareness course and tick the box is done. It's never done. It's never done personally, and it's never done as a business. It is a lifelong commitment, and we are always going to be learning. There are always new things that we can challenge ourselves and that we need to be challenging ourselves with. So there are practical programs we can do, but it's also a mindset and a shift in that. And that it's not just about filling a job, it's about really understanding, what it means to be part of the change, to helping the person see the pathway forward in the community, that they understand that this is the future for them and going for it.
I'm going to go back to Bradley because you're picking up on some of the themes that he touched on. What are the spaces that people are coming into currently?
This is a really, really important question, and has been something that we've been thinking more and more about. I think when we started P4G, we attracted a lot of people that were drawn to our energy, and it was a lot of like-minded people in the social sector, social shifters, people of that nature. And when we started to grow and build a reputation, people earlier in their journey started knocking on the door. And I think there's a lot of work to be done in that space. And I think when we designed our workplaces, we designed them with our default settings. Our brain is processing 11 million data points in every moment, and we only really take in 40. So we have to make shortcuts. And if the things that we're exposed to in life are of one vein, and we think about the people that have designed our workplaces, and the dominant culture that has designed our workplaces, they designed it based on their default settings. So how can we bring more awareness to what those are and start to challenge those and build safer spaces for everyone?
I'm going to go to you, Dawn. Once people have chosen to stay, what do we need to have in place to help them grow their skills so that they can not only find themselves here and attach to this place, but also be successful here?
Yeah, I think in order to have effective immigration, we have to have effective integration. And to have effective integration, I think we need to have effective education. And with effective education, we have great occupation. So I think there's a continuum that we have to work through there. And I thank you. I just made that up, by the way.
That's awesome.
Write that down.
That was good. That was good.
And, I'm joined tonight with folks from my team at NSCC, and they're all infinitely smarter than I am at this kind of stuff. I just, hands down, they are. And what they're locked on is this notion of the democratization of education. That's a powerful term. And when you think about the democratization of education, the basis of that is rooted in things like accessibility. It's rooted in concepts of meeting learners where they are. So as we increase the diversity of our province, our education system at all levels has to move more towards a democratization where we truly meet learners where the outcomes are the same. Like, you have to meet consistent outcomes, but people start at different places. And that concept is put on steroids as we look at the immigration and the population trends that the fine professor from Dalhousie presented tonight. I just want to make a little analogy. You know, all too often when we talk about education, there's an analogy used that compares it to an escalator. And you say people to start at this skill level, they have to move to this skill level. And it's like an escalator, you move them up. And if you need more people at this level, you simply add more escalators. The challenge is there are many people in this province who can't even get on the escalator. There's a gap that's just too wide. And that is a collective responsibility to help people get on. I'll finish off by saying, and it's a shout out to Patrick and his team at the Chamber, when they're done education, we need to get them connected to the workforce. There has to be an implicit stickiness. And the work that the Chamber does with its 1,600 plus members on work integrated learning to try to create the partnerships between the educational institutions and those who need labor, that is profoundly important work. And I would call out to anybody that's here tonight, if you ever want to connect and have a great experience, talk to the Chamber about their work integrated learning initiatives.
Love it. Thank you, Don. Jerry, we're going to throw it to you. What role can the education sector play in business becoming more accessible?
Well, I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we have in the disability community is the education sector, because most of the barriers that I face, for example, were designed in by professionals who were educated in these various institutions. So we need to get in there and ensure that people, when they graduate from courses like planning, like architecture, like interior design, that they graduate with an accessibility lens already built in. So that's probably, and as well, accessibility is not just about the built environment. It's a horizontal that runs right across all various fields, from HR management to technology to various things. So that's what we need to do really, is almost do an audit within our educational institutions like NSCC, who are, by the way, doing a terrific job in that area.
Yeah, lots of good stuff happening there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. It's an exciting time to be in Nova Scotia, to live and work here. And yet we need to make intentional choices that move us forward in sustainable and equitable ways. And we've been hearing bits and pieces of those themes throughout the night. Back to you, Bradley. What are you seeing when it comes to equity in the workplace?
Well, this is something as we grew and we understood our clients' needs more, it wasn't just about bringing 70% of the people that identify as part of an equity-deserving group into spaces. It was how those spaces welcome them. And so, as a part of that, we recognized that we didn't necessarily have all of the capacity to be able to do that. So recently, we've kind of joined with April Howe, who's here tonight, and merged our organizations. You can't miss her. She's in a bright pink suit somewhere out there. And together, I think we now have a more wholesome offering. And one of the things that we've been talking about a lot, in fact, on Friday, we were meeting with a potential new client, and they laid out kind of a lot of the goals that they had, and here's the things we want to accomplish, and we want to have this much representation, and it's great to do all of that work, but why? Why? What is your why? And I think anybody with lived experience that has faced privileged aggressions or has had to code switch or has had discrimination, understands their why. And if you as a leader, if you as an organization don't have a strong grasp of that why, people are going to see right through that. And people aren't going to feel safe, they're not going to feel included, and really they're just not really going to want to be around for very long.
And that's true in a workplace, and it's true in a community, and it's true in a
Absolutely.
province.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for that. Jerry, what kinds of help are out there for businesses? We had the benefit of you and some of your colleagues popping over to Peggy's Cove while it was in progress, schooling us on a number of things. But, you know, what's there for businesses who want to become more accessible? What tools are available?
Well,
to them?
there actually is loads of programs out there that somehow people just don't realize to make improvements to their businesses for accommodations, whether it's ramps, door openers, or to make their website more accessible for their customers. So there's generous funding programs. On the employment front as well, loads of not-for-profits who are providing services, Easter Seals, Reachability, Teamworks. They're out there, very experienced, and can provide you with tremendous support to accommodate persons with disabilities in your workplace.
Thanks for that. So while we're embracing growth in population for our economy, we also know it'll take time to thoughtfully address the challenging dynamics such as labor shortages and lack of housing supply that we're already seeing. Don, I'm going to go back to you. What does the future of education look like? Just a small question.
Just a small question, wow. You know, the future of education arrived 10 years early in March of 2020. We had to adjust so quickly within a week and undertake projects that we had on our work plans that had timelines of years. We did it literally in weeks. There's things like much more virtual, much more online, shorter, faster, more efficiently. Those are all the givens. But I think one thing that we're going to have to do from an educational point of view is help society in some ways overcome what I call an automation anxiety. You know, for the past 300 years, a little trip down history lane that I did earlier, in each revolution, there was an anxiety towards this latest automation that could potentially replace human beings. There's always that fear. Automation is going to take jobs away from people. But in the past 300 years, our economy has grown by over 100 times. The pie increases every time there's an automation leap. So as an educator, as an educational institution, we need to help remind people that the economic pie just increases and the opportunity for different kinds of jobs is there. Would you believe that in the past 45 years, since the invention of ATMs, that the number of bank tellers in the US has doubled?
I wouldn't have thought
Now, they've gone from being a clerk that's simply handing out money to a highly interactive relationship management kind of job that adds a great deal of value to that relationship. Fatten was telling us about her recent trip to Korea, where she was looking for a gift in a shopping mall, and she was offered help to find her product by a robot. And the robot, once received what she was looking for, directed her to that place in the store. Well, the person who once did that job needs to be retrained to do a different job, a higher level job. And as an educational institution, we need to work with that individual to move from that level of skill to a higher level of skill. That will increase the economic pie going forward.
Fascinating. Jennifer, I'll leave the last question for you. What should we be thinking about for immigration in the future of Nova Scotia?
So I'd like to put out a challenge. Right now in Nova Scotia, the retention rate for immigrants is 71%. So that's the highest in the Atlantic region. The province has set their target over the new plan to 75, which is great. But what if we said, you know, as a business community, an academic community, the nonprofit community, we want to hit 90. We want to make a difference here in terms of people staying. People come in through all sorts of great streams. Of course, there's improvement that could be made. There's a lot of investments in settlement services to have people stay here. So what if we had people actually stay here over the long term? Key to that is going to be, I think, fundamentally what we've all been talking about here tonight. People see their future here. They sense their belonging here. They sense that this is the place they want to be. So what do we need to do as a community if we take that on, sort of a one Nova Scotia next step thing, say we're going to do 90%. We can do that. And that will make a difference, I think, for us in terms of immigration. People will stay when people stay. And we need to really work on doing that.
Well said.
Well said. We've got a few minutes left.
Well said.
I'm going to kick it back to you, Jennifer, for any kind of closing statement, maybe picking up on the challenge you just leveled.
So absolutely. So I think one of the sayings that we've really embodied at ISENS is people bring people and people keep people. And so that understanding of the importance of family, we know that as Nova Scotians. We love it when our kids come back and stay with us. And that's really important. So we need to be able to have a process that really embraces people to stay here as a wider community. We have to be part of the change ourselves. This is not about just having, as I said earlier, people fitting into what we expect and need. It's about us understanding what they want, what their needs are, and that they see again their future. And that we really understand that no one in the retention goal, one group owns that. It's not the government, it's not the settlement community, it's not the business community. We all have to own that. So if we want to say that that's really important to us, we need to work in partnership together, we need to be supporting one another, and we need to fundamentally say we're committed to change.
Yep, great message. Thank you very much. Don, over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to this notion of great resignation versus great reshuffle. And look, I have the honor of knowing a lot of people in this room, and the fact that you run great companies with great cultures. But I think this is a time for us as a collective to double down on culture. It's often said that people don't quit their jobs, they don't quit the companies, they actually quit their managers. Well, I don't think they quit the managers. I think they quit their cultures in their organizations. It's been said that the jobs of yesterday were based on muscle, the jobs of today are based on brains, but the jobs of tomorrow will be based on heart. And I think that what we've been through for the past couple of years have resulted in people rethinking where they want to spend their time and their talents and give their passions. So I think collectively as a region, as a city, if we really double down on making our corporate cultures, large, small, or medium, the most inclusive, the most welcoming, one where people feel that they belong to a larger purpose, I think that will be the greatest competitive advantage that we can fight for. So that would be my challenge to all of us.
I love your vision. Jerry, over to you. Any parting remarks?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is, this discussion here is about, labor shortages. And back in 2017, the Conference Board of Canada did a very interesting study about persons with disabilities. And what they found out, a reason why a lot of people aren't working is because, attitudinal issues that I talked about earlier, but also because of barriers in the workplace. And they estimated that if barriers were removed, that by 2030, 550,000 new workers could be added to the workforce. About 70,000 for Nova Scotia.
Wow.
So those are large numbers, and they will add significantly to our gross national product and domestic products, and of course to our taxes as well. If you're a government official here,
if you're into those,
you'll be paying taxes. So that's really important. And the other reason, why would I hire a disabled person? Well, research has indicated that they're the most dedicated. Their absenteeism is lower than anybody else, right? And persons with disabilities are problem solvers. And the reason why is that, people say, and also about innovation, like thinking outside the box. Well, we live outside the box. And we got a problem solved to get into your box. Right. And that's a very valuable skill. But I also have a bit of a dream here, and I touched on it earlier, and that dream is for Nova Scotia to become the destination for accessible tourism. Again, talked about it earlier. You gotten a good start on it with Peggy's Cove. Thank you, Jennifer. And the waterfront and a lot of other things. Our airport is Rick Hansen Gold certified. We've got now an accessible taxi service. All those things all help. And the market is enormous. Again, it's that aging population. There's no destination right now that has taken that market space, or perhaps the cruise ship industry, but that's mobile. In fact, we can take advantage of that. So I think some big opportunities there, and I think the Chamber can play a huge part in that. And as I said earlier by Patrick, it's got to be collaborative between all sectors of our economy.
That's clearly an emerging theme tonight, too. It takes all of us working together in a common purpose. Last words to you, Bradley Day.
Be careful what you wish for. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to share this story, but here we go. You know, I talked earlier about like knowing your why as an organization, and I think I've had various ways of articulating my why when it comes to being involved in the work that we do. And I wanted to share something that took place a couple weeks ago. I had my hair braided yesterday. I took those braids out because they were getting a little old, and I was done with them. But when I had my hair braided, it was actually for Chamber photo shoot because we're up for Small Business of the Year. What? And I was very excited, and I went to my cousin's house for that. She just moved back to Nova Scotia, born and raised here, and moved to Ontario for a little bit and is now back and has a beautiful home in an incredible neighborhood. And it was just so awesome just to be with her and spend that time in that neighborhood. And I left, it was pretty late at night because braids take a long time if you don't know that. And on my way out, I got to the stop sign. I was like, was it a left or a right? And so I go on my phone. I'm like, pull up Google Maps to figure my way out of there. And I look up, and there's this lady. It's like 11 o'clock at night. There's a lady standing on the corner. I'm like, oh, she must need to go across the street. Let me pull away. I start to drive away, and she starts to chase my vehicle. And she's screaming and waving her hands. I'm like, did I hit her cat or her dog? Like, what happened? Like, what? So I immediately stop, and now I'm in the middle of this intersection. I roll down my window, and she says to me, do you have a problem? And I was like, oh, this is happening right now. I said, no, I do not have a problem. Do you? And she said, I most certainly do. She proceeded to run around to the back of my vehicle and scream out my license plate at the top of her lungs. And I drove away and had a moment a couple blocks away where I just pulled over and started to process that. And once I got home, I'll say it was not my first thought, but don't judge your first thought. I was reminded a few days prior to that, it was very important that I went to that event. I was at the Delmore Buddy Day, which is named after my grandfather, Delmore Buddy Day Learning Institute, 10-year anniversary. And the keynote speaker, Mfo Tutu, which is Desmond Tutu's daughter, I was talking about this African principle of Ubuntu. And Ubuntu means treating people like human beings. And one of the things that she talked about in that address was that if you can't see the humanity within yourself, then you can't treat others as human beings. And I had this realization in that moment that that lady needs me. I don't need her. And I think that that is my purpose in life, is to connect communities through building trust. And that was just another motivator and a reminder of why it is we do what we do and what motivates us on a daily basis to bring people together because they need us.
And there you have it. So with many thanks to our great panelists, and feeling optimized and optimistic and energized to get to work and to work with all of you, I'm going to hand it back to you, Patrick. Many thanks.
Thank you.
That was great. Really good.
Can I join you on the couch?
Yeah, come on over.
There we go. This is nice up here.
It is comfy.
It is comfy. That was great. It was great. It's great because sometimes there are things that we need to hear. Sometimes there are things that we should understand. And I think what I learned tonight is part of finding that right workforce is keeping your current workforce and understanding how to include and be inclusive to that workforce. I think I told Jerry this summer, we had Jerry speak at a board event, and I thought we had an accessible workplace at the Halifax Chamber office. And felt really good about that, quite proud of ourselves, until we had Kevin Murphy, who was the former Speaker of the Legislature, come to our office and tell me that our washrooms were not accessible. Our front door was accessible, our boardroom was accessible, but our washrooms were not accessible. And in case you don't know, washrooms are important for everybody. So, I learned something really important that day. I also learned that there's a lot of funding from the provincial government to improve your washrooms. So you should all think about that. It's important to have conversations. I loved your comment, Jennifer. People bring people and people keep people. I think, again, that's what we're doing. That's certainly what iSANS is doing, and the Y as well. We're doing that to ensure that we have the population we need, because as Sean pointed out, we're not going to be able to exist if there's only 2 or 3 people working to support the aging population that we have. I loved Don's comment about doubling down on culture. It's important to do. I don't think I wrote down everything everyone said. I know I want to braid my hair like Bradley. But that may not happen for me, unfortunately. These are important stories to hear. They're important lessons to learn, and they're important for us to take away to ensure that our workplaces are inclusive, to ensure that our workplaces are open, and that we're not sitting there making judgments about what makes the right workplace, because many of us don't have the lived experiences that many others have. So this is great. I think there was a lot to take away tonight. Maybe not what you expected, but I hope you enjoyed the evening. I want to thank again our presenting sponsor, Stuart McKelvey, for their support of the Chamber and the entire business community, and for supporting DASC this evening, an important organization in our community. Thanks again to our celebration sponsor, KBRS, for supporting tonight's event. I hope you, again, all had a chance to check out the Marketplace booths during the reception. We usually send out an email and a survey and that sort of thing. We'll make sure that we include links to the folks that were at the Marketplace. Common Good Solutions for supporting tonight's Marketplace. The booth hosts for joining us. Our premier gala partner, the Halifax Convention Center, our host partner, CN, and our print partner, Atlantic Digital. I encourage you to think about everything you've heard tonight from Minister Fraser, Murtika, Jennifer, Dawn, Jennifer, lots of Jennifers, Jennifer, Jerry Post, and of course Bradley. Thank you all for your insights and for the word that I think I'm going to take away, which is collaboration. Right? We can't do this alone. I said at the beginning, we had an event last week on housing, and what I took away from that was we need to collaborate. What I'm taking away tonight is we need to collaborate. You can't do it alone. You can't do it alone as a business. You can't do it alone as a municipal government. You can't do it alone as a provincial government. You can't do it alone as a federal government. You need to collaborate. And I really hope that if you take away any messages, That's one of the messages that you take away tonight. Thank you all for your rapt attention, and enjoy your evening. There's lots of great bars and restaurants out there in downtown Halifax. I saw Paul McKinnon. He wants you to visit every one of them tonight. If you do, please take a taxi home so that our roads can be safe. So thank you all tonight, and good night, everybody.
You wanna hot body, you wanna Bugatti, you wanna Maserati, you better work.
To last throughout the years. So bring your good times and your laughter too. We gon' celebrate your party with you. Come on now. Celebration. Let's all celebrate and have a good time. Celebration. We gon' celebrate and have a good time. It's time to come together. It's up to you. What's your pleasure? Everyone around the world, come on! It's a celebration. Celebrate good times, come on! It's a celebration. Celebrate good times, come on! Let's celebrate. There's a party going on right here. A dedication to last throughout the years. So bring your good times and your laughter too. We gon' celebrate and party with you. Come on now. Celebration. Let's all celebrate and have a good time. Yeah, yeah. Celebration. We gon' celebrate and have a good time. It's time to come together. It's up to you. What's your pleasure? Everyone around the world, come on! It's a celebration. It's a celebration. Celebrate good times, come on! Let's celebrate. Come on now. Celebrate good times, come on! Let's celebrate. We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate.